This speech is on the global revolution, interaction of two trios, and how the periphery surrounds the center on the global level. Capitalism took place, especially, or took the world, especially in the beginning of the last century, to a world war. It is a war between the capitalists or capitalist regimes and countries, but the rest of the world obliged to be part of it, just in the service of capital. This war, in fact, was for the division of the world between the imperialist countries. The contradiction which took place during that was the chance for the revolutionary communists in the Soviet Union, or in its Russia, to start the revolution, and the Bolsheviks took the power in Russia and create the new socialist state, which is the Soviet Union or USSR. One of the results, or during that time, and I mean 1916, 17, etc., the Arab countries have been reoccupied by the imperialism countries who inherits the Ottoman colonialism. And also during that time, or during that period, the creation or the beginning of creating a Zionist regime in Palestine started. After the World War, especially in 1929, the Great Depression took place in the center or all over the world, in fact. And also the regimes or the countries which lost the First War started preparing for a new war to regain a chance or a piece of the world, which many people call it, the war for the redivision of the world between the various countries. And that's why the Second World War took place. One of its results is that the United States became the dominant power all over the world, replacing Britain and French imperialisms. But at the same time, also this environment created a new thing which is very important, which is the expansion of the socialist bloc, and also the triumph of the Chinese Revolution. Which means that the world became two main poles, if you like, the capitalist and the socialist one. Between 1945 until 1965, nearly like this, there was a prosperous economic situation all over the West, and the rate of profit was high. They became more able to plunder the third world, either directly or indirectly, especially through the unequal exchange. But after the 60s of the last century, a new changes took place all over the world. The rate of profit declined in the center, and also the economic situation and social situation in the Soviet Union deteriorated, and also the conflict between China and Russia, or China and the Soviet Union, also took place, which means that the two poles were in a crisis. But the result of that was the collapse of the Soviet Union and the triumph of capital over labor on the world scale. In addition to that, the capitalist center, or the capitalist bourgeois in the center, made some form of alliance with the comprador capitalist classes in the periphery, and they consider, or they arrange or manage the world to be like a public sector for this capitalist regimes. But this alliance or the alliance between the center, the ruling classes in the center and the ruling classes in periphery was, in fact, the wealth were divided on the level or on the law of trickle down economy, which means most of the profit were transferred to the center. Sorry. During that period of time, in fact, three main developments started taking place all over the world. One is the creation or the beginning of the BRICS bloc, which composed of China, Russia, Brazil, South Africa, and India. And this bloc became or developed very fast in comparison to the development of Europe and America before. To the extent that their production from the GDP all over the world became now about 30 or more than 30%, while the share of the G7 still about 29 or even less than that. And this made the countries or the regimes or the rulers of the West in a very terrible situation, and they are either boycotting or imposing, economic siege against China, Russia, etc., or in fact declaring that they are preparing for even a war against China, and they started the war against Russia, as I think we mentioned before in many places or in many speeches, that Russia was in fact in its war in Ukraine, it was a war of defense, because the NATO became on the borders or very near the borders of Russia. This one, the other development, in fact, is the new changes in Latin America. After the 60s and 70s of the ruling regimes in Latin America, which is regimes of military juntas. After that, a new form or a new wave of democracy took place in those countries, and a lot of those countries, in fact, the progressive people reached or succeed or gained most of the votes and became in power. Those regimes were either popular or populist regimes in Nicaragua, in Brazil, in Argentina, in Bolivia, etc. Those countries are trying to avoid or to make some form of breaking or making some form of dealing from their dependency or with the United States or even with the West in general, but it is a very moderate way of struggle. In fact, it is a progressive, but it never being able or try to boycott or to dealing from the world capitalist regime, or especially in the West. The other development which is taking place recently, which is in Africa, because Africa is very rich and very poor at the same time. Very rich of wealth, but the peoples of Africa are very, very poor. And there are some progressive regimes that are taking place in power in those places. One of them Algiers, in fact, and also Burkina Faso, Mali, the Republic of Central Africa, and lately Niger. Those regimes are trying to boycott or to stop, being dependent on the imperialist countries, especially France and the United States. And they are orientating, in fact, towards some form of delinking from the world capitalist regimes or order. Now the question, to what extent those three blocks are going to be or to cooperate with each other to be some form of an alliance against or to face the West? The BRICS, the Latin American progressive regimes and also the African progressive regimes, I think it is necessary for those countries or those blocs to make an alliance which will really change the face of the world. But at the same time, I think there are another trio. If the first trio are the regimes, I'm trying to talk about the second trios, which is the progressive or the revolutionary people or currents in China or any BRICS in general, the revolutionary forces in Western Europe, and the revolutionary forces also in the Third World in general. The question is to what extent those two trios are going to cooperate with each other to challenge the imperialist countries. This reminds me to talk about the world the world system theory, which is established by the late Samir Amin, Wallerstein, Arrighi, and Gunder Frank. They said that the center of the world revolution lies in the periphery, and it will affect the center. They meant that if the periphery will have, and they believe that it must be or it will change to have a revolutionary regimes, progressive regimes who are going to stop, the Western plundering of the wealth from those countries. This means that the wealth which is transferred to the center became less and less, or in fact it must stop or it will stop. This will agitate the social classes or the popular classes or even the middle class in the West, because their situation will be deteriorated. More conflict will take place, and it might or it must be it must be changed to some form of class struggle in the West, which means that briefly the theory is that as long as you are stopping the transformation of wealth from periphery to the center, then the social center in the social relationship in the center will be very will go to more tension and more class struggle. And also this means that a socialist current or a socialist revolution started in the periphery and also continued to the center, and which means that a world revolution, a world will be changed towards a socialist revolution and socialist victory. I think that the cooperation between the two trios will or might lead to this form or to this revolution. Unfortunately, the situation in the Arab countries is too bad and very, very backward. If we try to read the situation in the Arab countries, on the shade or on the light of the developments all over the world, which we are talking about, the regimes in the Arab countries or in the Arab homeland is in fact an enemy to the Arab nation or to the Arab people, and this is in fact the topic of my last book about the Arab situation. Those regimes are still dependent and in fact also tools especially for the West. In addition to that, also those regimes are making a lot, especially the most reactionary regimes in the Arab countries, launched wars against the progressive regimes or the Arab republics. Against Iraq before, then Libya, then Yemen, then Bahrain, and now still the war after 12 years against Syria, which means that the Arab regimes are fighting each other for the sake of imperialism, and the Arab regimes, in fact, or most of the Arab regimes, are in the service of the enemy at the cost of their own peoples. In addition to that, also, the revolutionary people in the Arab countries is still unable to restore the Arab masses from the hands of the regimes, from the hands of the politicized religion, which is especially like Daesh and Al Qaeda, and also, in fact, from the hands of the reactionary Shia, not only Sunnah, who are in fact, arguing for the domination of this sect against the other sect. I mean, of the Shia over the Sunnah, which in fact will never succeed, but it will make a new continuous popular war. That's why to restore the Arab masses is the main object or the main goal which we have as a progressive or socialist people to achieve. Thank you.